We have an active shooter. We have an active shooter.
Let's go ahead and declare this a mass casualty.
Welcome to Active Shooter, a podcast that covers the whys, the hows, and the aftermath of active shooter and mass casualty events.
They have an active shooter in the building. A second call says they are being attacked.
I've been shot. 16910 means we got shots fired. 4:15 AS. Route 291 sounded like an automatic firearm.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
Thank you for listening.
You are listening to Active Shooter, a podcast that may contain adult themes, explicit language, and graphic depictions of violence. Portions of this show may be traumatic for those under 18. Listener discretion is advised.
We are continuing to follow breaking news for you. St. Louis police say 2 people are dead now, as well as the suspect, and several more people have been injured after a shooting at Central Visual and Performing Arts High School this morning. Police say officers responded and stopped the shooter quickly, who has not been identified. Police say they believe the suspect was about 20 years old and acted alone, and that there are no additional threats at this time. Still, the bomb squad is there checking out the suspect's vehicle.
The shooting at the Central Visual and Performing Arts High School was as shocking to the community as it was vicious. However, the family of the shooter was concerned about behaviors he exhibited, worried enough that they started to pay close attention, and offered to help. When they couldn't handle it on their own, they sought professional assistance, and when the behavior escalated, they asked for police intervention. Despite their obvious distress and attempts to help their child, they ended up powerless to halt the disturbing violence that would be inflicted upon so many unsuspecting students, teachers, and their families. The shooter wasn't silent about his plans, announcing in vague phrases in a private online community just what he meant to do. Unfortunately, despite all efforts to intercede, this highly troubled individual was able to carry out his destructive plans, which devastated the entire community. Today's case is dedicated to the lives and memories of the 7 injured survivors and the 2 deceased victims, Alexandria Navach-Bell and Jean Kuska. Active Shooter the podcast is a High Five Holly production, and I'm your host, JT. If you've listened to our prior episodes, you know that the Active Shooter podcast team has taken the No Notoriety Pledge, and we will not be sharing the real name of the shooters that we cover. We will be giving the shooters a pseudonym and refer to them by that name throughout the episode. This will help in clearing up any confusion in the story, while remaining true to our pledge in not naming the shooter by their actual name. We will refer to today's shooter as Carl. The Central Visual and Performing Arts High School, also known as CVPA, is located at 3125 South Kings Highway in St. Louis, Missouri. The school is a long-established institution of learning, which, according to the school's website, quote, fosters independent thinking in a creative and challenging environment, provides a diversified curriculum and environment, and prepares bright and talented artists for high education and opportunities in life. The school has a population of approximately 386 students across grades 9 through 12 and belongs to the St. Louis Public Schools District. The CVPA is a magnet school, which is essentially a school of choice that focuses on distinct fields of study, such as performing arts, languages, and STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and math. There is another magnet school called the Collegiate School of Medicine and Bioscience, which shares the same building as the CVPA school. Monday, October 24th, 2022 looked like any other fall day in St. Louis. The weather was warm, although the day was mostly overcast, with extensive cloud cover. It was already 70 degrees by 9 a.m. when students were sitting in class, wholly unaware of the evil that lurked just outside the very building in which they sat. Despite the frequency of school shootings, most students still feel a small measure of safety tucked inside the classroom of their school, especially when there are security measures taken, such as metal detectors and security guards. 19-year-old Carl wasn't deterred by things such as that. He was ready to commit unspeakable acts and wasn't about to be stopped by a metal detector or a guard. He drove a blue 2012 Dodge Avenger to the school, parked close to the building, and made his way towards a side entrance that was unoccupied by a security guard. The door was locked, but Carl just shot out the glass door and walked through the broken glass and headed up to the 3rd floor. Carrying a Palmetto State Armory AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle, 12 30-round magazines, and over 600 rounds of ammunition, Carl was dressed in black from head to toe and wore a field bag and a self-described, quote, chest rig. He dumped magazines throughout the school as he stalked the hallways, shooting up and down the 3rd floor with abandon. Inside the 3rd floor hallway, 15-year-old Alexandria Alex Nave Bell was shot and killed. The 10th grader was born on November 18, 2006, and was a dancer to her core. A member of the junior varsity dance team, the St. Louis Dazzling Diamonds, Alex was a mere weeks away from her 16th birthday, a milestone that the funny young woman was so looking forward to. In fact, Alex was planning to spend her birthday in Los Angeles, a trip she should have been able to enjoy. Instead, she will be mourned by her friends and family as she dances in heaven. The first 911 call was placed at 9:11 a.m. The caller shouted that there was an active shooter at the CVPA school and police were needed.
Me and my friend, we were hiding in the corner, and people were looking at us like we were being overly dramatic. And then we heard the gunshots, and we were all piled up on top of each other, and the boy in front of me got shot. I'm pretty sure he's still okay. But after the shooter left, I made eye contact with him, and I thought at that moment, this is it. My life flashed before my eyes.
Meanwhile, teacher Jean Kuska was desperately trying to protect her students when she was suddenly shot. She was later found inside of her classroom and was rushed to the hospital where she eventually succumbed to her injuries. 61-year-old Jean was born on March 7, 1961. As a young woman, Jean taught swimming lessons at her local YMCA, and it was there that her passion for teaching blossomed. She attended Missouri State University and earned a degree in health and physical education. An athlete herself, Jean played field hockey and was a proud member of the 1979 Missouri State University National Championship team. She had the incredibly prestigious honor of being inducted into the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame in 2010. It was far from her only achievement, however. Jean earned several teaching accolades throughout her career, including a national honor that recognized CVPA's achievements in wellness and health. In addition to her teaching career, Jean continued to coach various sports, including the women's cross-country team at the Collegiate School of Medicine and Bioscience, which is the school that shares the campus with CVPA. Education, though, was far from her only passion. Jean was an active volunteer for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. The evening before the shooting, she hosted a trivia night in support of the foundation, and she was in the midst of assisting in the planning of the 15th annual bike ride to cure diabetes at Amelia Island in Florida. She regularly did those types of things, and one often wondered when this superwoman had the time to sleep. She was devoted to her career, her students, and was an avid fan of Tom Petty, Diet Coke, and field hockey. But the most important thing to Jean was her beloved spouse, Stephen, whom she married in 1983, and her 5 children, which included 3 daughters and 2 sons, her 6 grandchildren and siblings, 2 sisters and a brother. Family was everything to Jean, and those same people, plus countless students, athletes, faculty, and friends, will deeply mourn the benevolent woman. A witness later reported that they heard Carl shouting, quote, "You're all going to fucking die," after he shot out the windows of their classroom. He tried to enter, but quickly moved on when he was unable to do so. He entered a dance classroom at one point, and he aimed and started to shoot, but the gun either malfunctioned or jammed. Either way, this provided students the opportunity to escape the room. Reports later indicated that Carl was heard muttering that he was, quote, "sick of this damn school," and, quote, "tired of everybody." Students and teachers sought shelter in classroom corners while others jumped from windows, desperately trying to escape what felt like certain death.
We just thought it was a regular intruder drill, but then when we started hearing sirens outside and the teachers started to even get scared, we knew that this wasn't just a regular drill and it was real. So then the teacher, she crawled over and she was asking for help to move the lockers to the door so they can't get in. And we started hearing glass breaking from the outside and gunshots outside the door. And then we tried to move out the window, jump out the window, but it was concrete at the bottom of one of the windows that was open, so we couldn't go down there. So we had to wait a little longer before the assistant principal came up to one of the windows that was locked. And when we opened it, the teacher said to come on, and we all had to jump out the window.
Both faculty and petrified students rushed from the school as police responded to the scene. Officers tried to stop whomever they could to ask if anyone could narrow down exactly where the shooter was. By 9:15 a.m., police had penetrated the school and, armed with enough bits of information to surmise where the shooter was, they headed towards the shooting, where they encountered Carl on the 3rd floor. He was barricaded inside of a classroom. Police ordered him out, and Carl responded by shooting. Police fired back, and after a few minutes, Carl was hit by police bullets, and the threat was stopped. The shooting was over by 9:25 a.m., as police extracted Carl from the classroom and sent him to the emergency room for life-saving intervention. No officers were shot in the exchange, and the entire shootout lasted about 2 minutes. Carl later died at the hospital. A reunification center was established at the nearby STEM school, Gateway High School. Students reported hearing the code, "Miles Davis is in the building," blasted over the intercom, and they immediately knew this was the signal for an active shooter. There were 7 security guards present at the school. However, they were entirely unprepared for an active shooter. The St. Louis Police, ATF, and the FBI each worked together to conduct the investigation into the CVPA shooting. The school, Carl's home, and his car were all searched, and the FBI set up a digital evidence collection website, which allowed anyone from the shooting who happened to capture photos, audio, or video to upload it directly to the FBI. Police did everything to understand Carl's motive, including analyzing several handwritten notes they located inside of his car. The notes contained details about other shootings, along with a list of targets for his own attack. One note read, quote, "I don't have any friends. I don't have family. I've never had a girlfriend. I've never had a social life. I've been an isolated loner my entire life." He also indicated in the writings that his folks knew nothing about his plans and claimed that they couldn't even find the notebook where he spewed so much hate and anger. Despite so much evidence being collected, there are no reports on exactly how the 19-year-old was able to purchase the high-capacity magazines that he used in the shooting. Seven students, 4 males and 3 females, were injured in the shooting, 4 of which were from gunfire. 1 student suffered a broken ankle trying to escape, while 2 others suffered from severe bruising. It should be noted that Missouri does not have any red flag laws. A red flag law allows a court to order the temporary removal of firearms from a person if it is believed that they may be a danger to themselves or others. As we will see, it's possible that a red flag law may have been the difference maker in this case. 19-year-old Carl was born in Carondelet, Missouri, which is a suburb of St. Louis. He graduated from CVPA in 2021. The young man was known to suffer from mental health issues, and his family made several attempts to get him treatment. He previously spent a period of time at a mental health treatment facility, but Carl continued to struggle even after he was released. His family tried their best to keep tabs on him, including routinely checking his bedroom and mail. His family even went so far as to implement a tracking system, so they knew what types of things Carl had delivered in the mail, and attentively watched his interactions with others in an effort to monitor his behavior. Carl went to therapy, and it was reported that he took medication, and his family took stock of the medications, ensuring that he stayed consistent with taking them on time. Most who knew him reported that Carl was lonely and kept to himself, rarely speaking, even when spoken to. On the other hand, Carl attended the drama program at CVPA, and his classmates there spoke of a young man who was friendly and engaging. Carl didn't have a criminal record and no known police contacts. However, on October 8, 2022, he tried to buy a gun from a firearms dealer in St. Charles, Missouri. But the purchase was denied because he couldn't pass the FBI background check, which is likely due to his mental health history. Undeterred, Carl went and purchased a gun from a private citizen, who really wasn't prevented by law from selling a gun to another individual. The seller legally bought the gun from a licensed dealer in 2020, and just as legally sold it to Carl, thereby providing a loophole that allowed Carl to easily obtain the murder weapon. Carl's mother found the gun, and she immediately did the right thing. On October 15, 2022, she contacted the police and reported that her son had a firearm in his possession, and being an individual who suffered from serious mental health issues, she didn't think it was safe. She wanted police to come and retrieve the firearm so it was safely secured. She didn't want the gun in her home, and frankly, she wasn't comfortable enough with guns to handle the weapon herself. Police responded by indicating that, because he was over 18, Carl was lawfully allowed to have a gun. This seems entirely counterproductive if he was denied the legal sale from a registered gun dealer. However, the police still came and collected the gun and passed it along to another adult who was lawfully permitted to possess it. How precisely the gun ended back into Carl's possession is completely unknown. It must be reiterated that Carl's family took every step, every precaution, to prevent their son from harming himself or others. While it feels like this tragedy absolutely could have, or should have, been prevented, it's equally uncertain how much more could have been done, aside from a red flag law, or perhaps committing Carl to an institution where he wasn't free to leave, which is a scenario that raises its own moral questions and issues. For their part, law enforcement officials took great care to credit the shooter's family with doing what they could in order to get their child the mental health treatment he so desperately needed. The family had constant contact with medical providers and were much more involved with their teen than most parents. The school reported on January 17, 2023, to a red carpet welcome back for their students. The bullet-riddled walls were patched up and repainted, and presented the image of a pristine institute of learning. Therapists and counselors were on hand to provide any type of support services needed. However, despite the appearance of a warm return to the school that months earlier held so much fear and panic, armed security guards stood at entrances to give the impression of safety. The truth is, their presence truly depicts the harsh reality that there was no safety here, and that this was the place that shattered their world and robbed them of their youth. The juxtaposition between the two is the stark reminder that the threat of a school shooter is a daily reality for all of our children. We all have the unique ability to help prevent such a catastrophic event from happening if we keep our eyes and ears open and never hesitate to report when something or someone just doesn't seem right. With the delicate balance of mental health reform, education, active shooter training, and common sense gun laws, we may one day realize the dream that there will be no more active shootings. We pray that love will prevail over hate.
Too many have died. We should say to ourselves, not one more.
In the meantime, we urge our listeners to stay aware of your surroundings and keep in touch with your loved ones. If you see something, say something. You never know how many lives you'll be saving. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Active Shooter, the podcast. Remember, if you see something, say something. There's no telling how many lives you may be saving. A big thank you to Darren Curtis, who composed some of the songs on our show. You can find him online at www.darrencurtismusic.com. Make sure to check us out on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Active Shooter, the podcast, and on Twitter at Podcast Active. Thank you, and be safe.